you ever watch a baby being fed? You can see how completely we depend on others when we're very small.
I was part of a family of 7 kids, the oldest of 5 boys. Very, very lucky with 2 incredibly good parents. And at that time as kids, really good siblings. We got along really well. We did lots of fun stuff together, did family trips. We didn't have tons of money, but we went lots of places.
I think the beginning of my childhood was basically normal. I had 2 really great parents and a sister, and it was a very loving situation, a very loving family.
I was one of those sort of leaders of the neighborhood, so did lots of things to instigate and start things. But I remember as a young kid, I knew there was something different about me. And by different, I don't mean kind of special or unique.
I believe I was gay when I was born. I found it difficult to relate to the boys that were in the neighborhood. My best friend was a girl. She and I hit it off really well.
I felt a stronger attraction and comfortableness around boys. But I always remember that feeling, there's just something strange about that. And the toughest thing for me then was that you really had nobody you could talk to about that.
I did get influenced quite a bit by my mom. She didn't ever want me to be messy or dirty. I kind of learned you don't pull your shirt out, you don't roll up your sleeves, that kind of thing, which all the other boys did. One day they decided, about 4 of them, that they were going to kind of mess me up out on the playground. They started coming after me. I got really scared and I started to run. I suddenly realized they weren't going to catch me because I was a lot faster than they were. They gave up. I was just so aware of something I'd never realized, that I was better than they were when it came to running.
Does God see us?
God sees us and watches over us.
Does God know all things?
God knows all things, even our most secret thoughts, words, and actions.
Of course, as we grow older, most of us begin to strike out for ourselves.
As I got closer into my grade school years, found myself hanging around with a lot more guys, and part of the draw of that was that a number of those guys were also sort of drawn to religious things. So getting thoughts about, even then in 7th and 8th grade, about being a priest or becoming a brother.
I remember Frank, even as a kid, I think he showed all of us that he had these aspirations to be a priest. And I remember even when he would have mass in the basement, we'd all get a Necco wafer and we'd walk out real pious and then start hitting each other in the backyard.
When I went to high school, I went out for the football team, finally was being liked by all these other guys my age. I went to one of my religion classes and our counselor wanted to talk to us, as he wrote on the board, homosexuality, that we needed to look out for men who preyed on boys and were mentally ill and sinful. I felt like I was never going to be able to get married. I wouldn't have any kids. I might not even be able to have a job. Everything fell together in my head sitting in that classroom. Probably one of the worst moments of my life.
I did fear being what we would call nowadays outed, or someone picking on you or beating you up or teasing you, and I think that was one of my biggest fears.
And I felt like I was the only one in the school that was like this, and nobody ever told me that there were others.
I can honestly say I have never felt, from the very beginning, any discomfort about who I was, and if that was my nature or my orientation, whatever we called it, that I would be ashamed of that or uncomfortable with that. I sort of finally began to really convince myself that I knew I was going to be a priest, or I wanted to be a priest. I thought, it ain't going to work if I'm gay and I'm attracted to men.
I broke down with my mom and told her. She didn't think it was real. She sort of understood it, but I didn't want her to tell my dad. And I talked to one priest about it who wasn't very helpful. He just said it was a phase that I'd probably outgrow. And so I spent all 4 years up and down emotionally. But I always felt like I loved myself. I just didn't love what was happening to me sexually. And that's the reason why I entered the Jesuits. It was because I was running away. I felt like there was no other way that I could be successful in life unless I went to become a priest.
All throughout my high school, I continued to sort of live as if I weren't gay in a sense, dating girls and all that. And when I was accepted to the Jesuits and finally got that official letter in the Word and began to tell people, I said to myself, this is probably good that I won't have to deal with it, because if I'm really going to do this and I'm serious, I will have to be a celibate person. I won't be able to have any relationships.
Yes, Nick is learning the importance of looking ahead. He's making some decisions about the kind of future he wants and some plans to reach it.
The first time I met Jerry was September the 1st, 1964, when I entered the Jesuit seminary at Florissant, Missouri. Jerry was already in the seminary because he'd entered the year before.
I remember Frank's handshake being one of the firmest I'd ever had, and I was kind of impressed by that. The other thing was he reminded me of Clark Kent in the Superman series with his glasses, and I was constantly, during all those early years and beyond, questioning why I entered, because it was mainly because I was running away from my homosexuality.
I think it's when we went to philosophy, which was like our 5th year, but we moved out of the seminary, which was very restrictive, out in the country, onto a college campus with women and men our age and stuff, and got kind of thrown in there.
We saw each other a lot more. I remember us having conversations and getting closer and realizing how alike we really were. We were going places together, just Frank and I, and we were still in a community and did things with the other Jesuits, but Frank and I are the ones that were together all the time.
I first met both Frank and Jerry back in the late 60s, early 70s. All three of us were teaching at St. Louis University High School. Frank and Jerry were both in that part of the Jesuit training, which we call Regency, where we spend years teaching.
I can honestly say I don't think either one of us realized at that time that there was ever going to be what we have now today in the relationship we have and be married. I think there was just this relishing the fact that we liked each other, we enjoyed life, we were having a lot of fun with a lot of other people, but I don't think we had any idea, understanding about that. And it wasn't until we eventually left that teaching experience and we're going to go on to the next step, which was theology, which Jerry and I specifically chose to go to different places and ended up going to the same school of theology in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I think we were trying to push away from that, thinking that it might be good if as we're growing closer just to separate for a while or not be together all the time. And yet, as fate had it, or whatever else you might call it, we ended up being in the same house, in the same place, and at the same time. But it was a difficult time because I think both of us were dealing with our sexuality in different ways. For me, as I realized more and more, wanting to be a priest, knowing that if I got involved or did something, that was going to jeopardize that. And yet I knew that I needed that relationship. I couldn't live without that kind of connection, that kind of intimacy.
Frank and I were on a retreat during my second year of philosophy and his first, and we obviously had become a lot closer, but we'd never talked about our sexuality or anything like that. But on this retreat, we went on a walk. During the walk, I finally said to him, I want you to know that I'm gay. And it's the first person I ever said that to. And he looked at me and said, so am I.
Yeah, I think people who would be listening to this or hearing our story would really wonder, and maybe even thinking, this is scandalous, this is wrong, how could you have done this? And thinking, you know, we didn't do this lightly. We did this, as Jerry said, he was talking to a person, I was talking to a person. We were dealing what we called spiritual direction or direction in our lives, and the kind of thing you do as healthy people to grow to understand who you are sexually and intellectually and spiritually and mentally, trying to find your way in life. And we were fortunate to have people back in Cambridge whom we were able to talk to and deal with this and process this. So it wasn't done lightly. I'd say with a little bit of fear and trembling, wondering if we wanted to even tread that way. And yet knowing, I think for me, I keep coming back to the thing, I knew that I wanted to be a priest, but I had to be in a relationship with someone. You can't live without that. It's just not natural.
Perspective? Sure. You know, see the problem in relation to your life.
Key to priesthood in any form or any tradition is, for the most part, to be celibate. You don't have sexual relations with people, you don't get married, you don't have a relationship that is intimate at all.
That's where we had to make some decisions about what we were going to do. And I eventually decided that I really wasn't supposed to be a priest. It was such a distressful time because I didn't think I could live without him. And that first year that I was away from him, it became so apparent. We were together during the summer, but when Frank had to go back to Boston and I was doing my first job at Thornton High School, it was really hard.
I was the first principal of Thornton High School. Well, during the time that Jerry and I worked here together, he had really had a terrific reputation in terms of being a counselor and his relationship with kids and faculty and all the rest.
Well, I first met Jerry when I came to Horizon in 1995, and he was a counselor here. In the 7 years that I was principal here and Jerry was on staff, there's not one complaint or concern shared from a student or a parent. What I also say about him is that he's just the most fabulous person, and there's nothing like having someone on staff who is a wonderful person, because those are the kinds of role models and influences that you want to have among kids.
For me, Jerry played a really important part in my younger years growing up and going through high school, because he was a very consistent, open, kind, caring presence, which I think are all things that made him a great teacher and a great guidance counselor.
I don't know what changed it so quickly, but I suddenly decided I had to trust Frank.
I felt more comfortable, more at peace, thinking, okay, I can go on and do this. I can accept it and see how things work out. And I guess I had this silly confidence that it all would work out. So I came to Denver, where Jerry was that first year, and I had to be with other new priests, and so we had to work in hospitals and work in churches and stuff and do a lot of assignments. But obviously I'd become very close to Jerry. We were very intimate, and so we kept that up and did lots of wonderful things together and beginning to share life. That put me in, I think, in difficult situations, because I did not want to be a source of scandal to people. I didn't want people to think I was naive or cheating or being phony about the whole thing. But at one point in that time, Jerry and I decided we had to do something. I had to either stop being a Jesuit or something. So we made the decision that I would at least leave the Jesuits and see if I could somehow figure out a way to stay in the priesthood. One of my good priest friends in the diocese, he knew the whole story, and he actually basically said we could let you just sort of start slowly moving in here to kind of be part of the diocese. I believed that if nothing else, Jerry and I could show to people that you can be a priest, because the calling is to be a priest. Has nothing to do with being celibate, gay, straight, or otherwise married, that all people, women, married people, could be priests. The call is to serve. The call is to do and to be there for other people.
As much as I trusted Frank was going to work out, all I could think about was that you would be sent to Kansas City and I would be here, and then what were we going to do? Or, you know, we'd be separated and have a distant relationship, and this is where either blessed or luck, it just worked out, because Frank stayed here and we were able to work it out in the closet for 25 years, basically. I always wanted to have an old Victorian house, and Frank did too.
And I remember when they bought the house over where they still live, Jerry took me over there one day to see it before they bought it. So we went over there and he showed me around, and of course I thought the place was fantastic, even though I knew they had a lot of work to get it where they wanted to. That's how I came to know that Frank and Jerry were a couple.
I think I was the one that first brought up, once we were pretty settled in our relationship, that even though, honey, you are a priest, we should try to adopt kids.
It was in the early 90s when we became very serious about that adoption. And because we were gay men, I think the thought was that this is never going to work.
And we didn't have the money to go to China or someplace like that to get a child, so we had heard that social services in Denver was one of the cheapest ways to do it.
Jerry was a high school counselor at the time that I first talked to him, and he called to ask about the possibility of adoption in Denver County.
So I went and spoke with somebody who was in charge of the main adoption office, and she said, you know, Jerry, we don't have a serious problem with the gay relationship. In fact, it's great that you've been together so long, but people here that I did touch base with felt like it was going to be too hard to keep this confidential about Frank's priesthood, and we don't think it's a good idea.
We let it drop for another year, it seems like, and Jerry called back again, and of course that person was gone, there was a new person, and as it turns out, there was a whole different sense of openness to the whole thing, because she, like other social workers, were so aware that there were a lot of kids in the Denver area who really needed to be adopted, and specifically kids who were children of color, so biracial or African American or Hispanic kids, and was wondering if we'd be interested in that. And we quickly agreed wherever we could help, or whatever kid would need a home, we'd be happy to try that. Though we had our own concerns about being gay and being white and would that work, but we took the risk because we had so much support from them.
Roberta placed Tim with them. They loved her dearly. She was the first worker who placed a child with them.
My first memories when I was 3 were or are of being in this house and being in this kind of weird environment that I had never been in, and having these two guys be like, hey, this is where you live now.
From the moment Tim entered our house, it was like he knew he belonged here. He felt very comfortable, and I think there was never a doubt in our minds that not only had we made the right decision, but that this incredible child felt so much at home, and he knew he was going to be okay. And I think we realized when Tim was very young that even though the two of us just found great delight and joy in being around him, being with him, that there was something missing, and we decided pretty quickly on that that was another brother.
We said we probably ought to get another either African American or biracial child for Tim's sake. And so within about a couple months, they called and said, we found one and we would love for you to take him. His name is Dominic.
I was adopted at 4 years old by two gay white guys.
He was a tough kid and probably challenged us more than a lot of them, but he's just a great kid too. But he, like the others, came through some really tough circumstances in life, and you look at a kid like that and think, wow.
Dominic and Tim just really bonded, and it was like, this is what we wanted to have happen. And they were just so cute together and became really good friends and brothers.
About that time, I had a little boy that I had to remove from his relatives in Seattle, and I came back to Denver with little Demetrius. I didn't even have a place for him to go, and Roberta said, call Frank and Jerry.
And so we got a call about Demetrius.
Demetrius was probably the, hope the other kids won't hear this, but the most magical of the three so far. If you look at pictures of him, you see this innocent, pure child who delighted in everything and found newness and joy in all things that he saw.
Early childhood was kind of a blur at times, but when I first realized that I had two white parents that are gay, I think it was maybe in 4th grade, I kind of came to realization, just oh, these are my parents that love me and are taking care of me.
And then came Dante.
Dante was the most bounced around. He had a lot of bruises, or baggage maybe.
I came on my 5th birthday, exactly on the day of my birthday, so.
It was hard in the beginning. Dante remembers, I mean, he was one who was very emotional, screamed a lot, you know, and the guys, the other three, really struggled with it for a while.
My initial impression that I probably had is they're going to give me up like every other family so far has.
We're always waiting for the families to call us back and say, we can't do this anymore, you're going to have to come and get the kids. And Frank and Jerry never even hinted at that, ever.
I might have realized they were keeping me after the first vacation or two. If they're taking me places, they probably want to keep me for family reasons. So I just kind of accepted that I had a family that wasn't going to give me up finally, so that was a nice thing.
What should these parents do? What is your advice? How can we immunize our children against prejudice?
We cannot know God or talk about a God unless we first begin to experience and find that in ourselves and in each other.
God truly answered our prayers by sending you to us at the last minute. We will never forget, as long as we live, how special you made their wedding day. Your words were warm, personal, touching.
Most people in the Catholic Church that knew about Frank would probably say that he was probably the best preacher, liturgist in the city of Denver.
We have to love each other and find that which is best and the good in each other. And when we experience that, we do begin to see God and know that's what love's about, and that's the God who dwells in us.
In the mid-1990s, I was appointed pastor at St. Ignatius Loyola Parish here in Denver. I believe it was Jerry is the one who approached me about having the boys that they had adopted attend Loyola School. And they also started attending Mass there on Sundays. And so Jerry and Frank and the boys seemed to fit in very naturally in there.
I am not Catholic. I started going to Dignity Denver because I was dating somebody else who went to Dignity Denver. It's obviously before I met Terry.
What actually drew me to Dignity was the fact that I was at a point in my personal life when I wanted to reconcile my sexual orientation and my religion or my religious beliefs, my spiritual beliefs.
There was really a hope that perhaps issues related to the GLBT community and a lot of other related issues maybe were going to be addressed by the church. We certainly were sort of perceiving, Frank's evolution where he was at in relationship to the institutional church. I think, he was fairly open in talking to members of the community about, having to confront some of the requests that were being made of him in terms of his relationship with Jerry and with his children.
Certainly aware that Jerry and Frank both were taking considerable risk for themselves, for their professions, and being in this relationship, and then subsequently adopting these boys.
I'm sure the Archbishop was aware that Frank and Jerry had this very unique relationship, and he may have even known about the boys. I just don't know how much he knew or not, but.
So I found myself sitting face to face with an archbishop presented to me what I basically would call two options. And the first was I could get a parish or work in a church or do something priestly in the archdiocese, but if and only if I would give up living with Jerry and having the 4 boys as part of my family life. And the other option is I could stay living with Jerry and the 4 boys, and I'd have to lose my priesthood and give that up.
Oh, I'll give you a parish if you leave your family and your partner. To me, that isn't what Jesus Christ would have said.
It's this absolute unchristian harshness where you cut people off, and that hits deeply in me, and it brings up some really awful memories.
It's really sad that he was asked to make that decision, because even if someone is a wonderful priest and has a wonderful sense of spirituality and relationship with God, they can't be in a relationship, they can't be gay, and they can't have children.
The backlash I got from other priests and some of the harsh letters I got telling me that I was a pretty bad guy, and how could I be so dishonest, and how can I live this way? And a lot of it was around being gay. It was the whole gay thing, and God forbid that you'd be in a relationship. It just saddens me deeply because I think it has really hurt the church, driven away lots of people, and made it extremely difficult and very painful for people to want to be part of it.
I really think his heart was broken when he was told by the Archbishop that he could no longer serve. And so many people probably supported that, but many, many people didn't and felt what a waste for the church.
Our family was different. I knew that not everybody accepted gay parents and same-sex marriage, and I knew that people had issues with people of color, and in particular black people. When we would go to like Red Lobster or any dinner place or anything like that, heads would turn. Everyone from the waiters and waitresses to the people at the tables adjacent to us. So we would have people come up and ask us,
We decided to put them in an African American community with kids, and so we sent it. We lived on the west side of Denver, which was mostly Hispanic and white. We sent them to schools on the east side that were much more African American mixed, and we found some great schools and a lot of great people over there, and they became really involved with their own culture because of that. And we'd have to add, it's not like we didn't have problems. We dealt with a lot of adolescent issues and issues that they brought with them.
I love these people. My pops, both of them, my brothers, they always been there for me. But, I'm a person. I'm only human. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect.
Frank and Jerry did have struggles because the kids that are placed through the child welfare system have had trauma to the max.
People have struggles in their lives. And so while I have had a lot of successes and wonderful things happen in my life, I've also had times that have just not been healthy for me, have not been happy for me. Some of that stuff has to do with my mental health and just my overall health in general. And there came a time when I was in college where I took a year off of school and I had to really just heal. I got some help, I got some support. And without my family, I wouldn't have been able to get through it.
The kids who need placement for adoption, so many of them experience things that adults just can't understand. Abandonment, having to be torn away from their parents by strangers.
I was 3 years old watching the Power Rangers on TV. Suddenly my mom took me by the hand and said there was something she wanted me to see. I thought we were going shopping, but I was going to be with her no more. She gave me to some lady from foster care standing by the door. As mom waved goodbye, I gave a sigh and was about to cry. She never said why. And that's it.
As far as the relationship with my parents, the first few years, I was kind of detached because I didn't think they were going to keep me. So I just didn't try to please them or try to do anything to really make it so they'd like me, because I just thought they'd give me up.
DJ was going through some struggles.
I moved out and then, doing what I had to do to survive. You know what I mean? And then I went to jail. I went to jail for a long time. Just over 3 years.
It hadn't always been easy, especially with them being a gay couple, with Frank being a priest. They had a lot of challenges, more than most of us have, for sure. And yet they handled it beautifully. They just take it in stride, or seem to, and that's pretty amazing. They're always focused on other people and how they can help them.
Chaplains in general tend to be people that are taught and trained to be totally open and accepting to anyone and everyone, and seeing the divinity in every person. And Frank is seen that way. You cannot walk down the hallway at this hospital without seeing people stop him and praise him and tell him what a great person he is.
When we work in the ER together, Frank offers support where, for instance, a family member has passed away, and he will sit until the family is comforted, whether they're upset or emotionally drained or agitated or aggressive. Frank will always come into the room and calm down the situation. His integrity and passion for helping people is out of this world, and he's just wonderful.
The most important thing is that we love one another. That's the one thing that really matters. At the Last Supper, Jesus reduced all the commandments to that one: love one another as I have loved you. You know, and Frank and Jerry, I think, really demonstrated that.
For me, it was a matter of just embracing the beauty that is my family, and just seeing all the hard work and effort my parents put into keeping things all together, rolling, supported, and people loved.
All in all, I feel like I'm very lucky to found a family to take me in, treat me like their own, and help me accomplish all my goals.
We are a very tight-knit family, and everyone's supportive of each other. And as we've grown older, we can see people growing into the young adults that they are and becoming more independent from our parents.
I'm thinking about going back to school. I contemplate about it all the time, but I haven't taken that, step.
When I look at our world today, with all the lying and greed and selfishness that seems so prevalent, it's inspiring to see these two guys whose honesty and generosity and selflessness have been so obvious for so long. They renew my faith in humanity.
We, often have these ideas of what makes people great or wonderful, and they're very grandiose ideas. But I think what really is true is that when people bring genuine care and concern to their everyday interactions with other people, that's pure gold. And I think Frank and Jerry bring that certainly to all those that they interact with in their daily lives.
I very much admire the whole domestic situation. I just think that's wonderful that they have provided such a good home for the boys.
It's an emotional thing because the risks that they were taking, the love that they had between them and in their hearts, that they would reach like this. And then you look at these young men today, and they are young men today who are wonderful, wonderful human beings, and that those boys all love each other. What does that tell you?
And I have to look back and say, it has been and is a wonderful life. I mean, I feel like we're so lucky, so blessed, so whatever, because we've had so much and we've been able to do what we wanted to do. Well, someday we'll go on cruises and do all those fun kind of things. Okay, we won't go on cruises, maybe. So with the lottery,
I wouldn't mind going to like an Alaskan cruise and seeing.
My friends are doing that. Hey, that sounds good. I like that idea.
Dubai. Expensive. Dubai. Yeah, right.
It's expensive.
And we'll say to you is, we'll say goodbye.
Dubai?
bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free.